Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk coming at you live from a hotel room in Allen, Texas. Been out in the field the last few days. Matter of fact, quite a bit of the last week and a half working on lakes and trying to knock some things out before it got too cool. And actually last Tuesday night I was way up in the Panhandle and I couldn't even get a cell phone signal where I was in order to let everybody know I wasn't going to be broadcasting last Tuesday night. So my apologies for that, but here we are today. So we have 2 viewers, and you guys chime in whenever you get ready. I thought tonight I'd talk about some of the activities that have been going on lately and just some of the things I've seen, some tidbits. I got to spend a little time in an electrofishing boat last week on the Panhandle of Texas. And I saw a couple of really interesting things. Hello, Samuel Jenkins. Good to see you, buddy. I don't think I know you yet, but I'm glad you're here. If you got any pond questions, fish, plants, water, anything to do with fishing ponds, pitch them right at me. I'm glad you're here. We're going to have a little fun tonight. So, hello, Samuel Jenkins. Good to see you. Okay. So anyway, the first lake I looked at was about 5 acres. And I had electrofished that lake 11 years ago. And as I recall, the lake is shaped kind of like a hockey stick with a long neck that goes way back up a creek, and then down in the main body of the lake was just pretty much barren of any kind of habitat except for aquatic plants. The water was crystal clear. Hello, Jason Dodd. Yeah, I was speaking earlier to nobody, I think, and last Tuesday night, by the time I got settled in, I didn't realize I didn't even have a cell connection, much less internet, where I was in this remote area of the Panhandle of Texas. So I couldn't tell anybody I wasn't going to broadcast. But anyway, here we are. Well, on that particular lake, it's north of McLean, Texas, which is east of Amarillo. Hello, John Dyer. There's Chuck. Chuck's Janzalone checking in. Good to see Chuck. So anyway, we launched the electrofishing boat, got in it, and started electrofishing some fish. And what we picked up first was a bunch of little bitty bluegills, like 1.5, 2 inch long bluegills, and then some 2.5 to 3 inch long baby bass. Well, in December, you shouldn't see any 2-inch baby bass in that part of the planet. So as we kept going, pretty much the entire bottom of that lake, the water was crystal clear. I could see down. I dropped a Setchi disc over the side, and it didn't even go. I mean, it never went out of sight. It would hit the bottom pretty much everywhere I was. So that water was clear to at least 10 feet, maybe 12 feet. So it was just really, really, really clear, which has allowed the aquatic plants to just grow all over the place. And they had started going dormant because they'd had a couple of cool spells where the water got cool. Hello, Danny Mac, Northern blowing through. Yep. Yep. Hey, there's Brother Shrum checking in from Oklahoma City. Danny Mac's down and around San Antonio. Christopher Aguilar, South Louisiana. Oh, I'm glad you did that. Hashtag Palm Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're going to be eligible for a drawing for, I think, a beer mug. And I've got Leanne working on that. I think we've got 3 beer mugs left with my picture on it from the Hall of Fame. Who has that? I do. So anyway, as we're shocking along, we started picking up some pretty good sized bass, 2.5 to 4 pounds. And there were no fish in the middle. Travis Paul Smith checking in. Boy, good to see you, buddy. Yep. And so as we were shocking up, I couldn't help but notice these bigger fish, but they also looked slightly underweight. We ended up shocking up, I think it was 4 different size classes of bluegill. The bottom of that lake was about 80% covered with bushy pondweed with some coontail and a little bit of American pondweed. But by far the most dominant was bushy pondweed. There were some Cara up in the shallower waters. So the bottom line is about 80% of that lake bottom had some kind of aquatic plants growing, most of which were about 2 to 4 feet under the surface of the water. So we could navigate through it pretty easy. Thanks, Travis. I'll let Debbie know. I don't think she's going to watch tonight because she's tied up with some social event. Well, as we're shocking along, I noticed that the bigger bass that we were picking up were mildly underweight, I thought. And then when we started to weigh and measure them, they were all in that 85 to 88 standard relative weight size, which means that they were pretty seriously underweight. But here this lake was teeming with bluegills in 3 different size classes, and a few green sunfish and a few natural hybrid sunfish. So the conclusion there was, and I asked the landowner, just to give you a little backstory, when I looked at that lake 13 years ago, it was similar to that, what we saw last week, very similar. So the recommendations were to deal with the aquatic plants, and in that part of the planet, I'm real comfortable stocking triploid grass carp, which he did, and he stocked them at about, I think he stocked 30 of them in that 5-acre pond. And over the next year and a half, he said that the vegetation was managed. It wasn't all gone, but it was managed, and the fish just started growing like crazy. So that made a big difference. And then as I got to looking at that population of fish and thinking about it, I thought, you know what? These bass did not lose, 15 to 20% of their body weight fast. They've lost that over a longer span of time. And I said, this fish population and the way the bluegill numbers had exploded, because that much aquatic plant growth is perfect habitat for little bitty bait fish, tiny little bass, tiny little bluegills. So as I looked at it and thought about it, I thought, you know what? There's a lot of bait fish in there, but they're locked up. Man, they have the cafeteria doors closed. They couldn't eat. They couldn't grow. And then it started dawning on me that those bass had to have lost that weight over at least a year span of time. And because of the amount of bait fish there was enough to at least help maintain them, which they hadn't done. And so I said, you know what, it looks like your aquatic plant started coming back about 2 to 3 years ago. He said, yeah, that's right. He said, I started noticing it was getting a little unruly summer before last. So it was 2 years ago that the plant started coming back, and the fish have responded to that by having a lot more baby bluegills and very few intermediate-sized bass because the bigger bass were eating them. So recruitment of bass, subadults to adults, had stopped for 2 years. And those bigger bass had chowed down on those intermediate bass and could not eat the bluegills. And when they ran out of the intermediate bass, that's when they started kind of losing weight. So that crystal clear water was a factor in how that fish population was turning out. Now the recruitment was pretty good with little bitty bass. So what that tells me, this is pretty interesting. You guys are going to like this. Hello, Fred Bingaman. There's Josh Milski. Good to see Josh. Dave Weber checking in from Northwest Missouri. Danny Mack ordered an underwater camera with a 7-inch screen. Merry Christmas to Danny Mack. And you use it. I know what you're going to do with it. You're going to get out there and name all your fish. You're going to see all your fish underwater. You're going to name them. Billy, Tommy. Oh, there's Betsy. How's she doing? I know you. I know you. I know what you're going to do. So, and have a battery-powered RC. Oh, you got to be killing me. You're killing me, Smalls. You got a remote control boat. Of course you do. How old are you? 12? You're going to have some fun with that, buddy. So as I thought about it, there had to be bigger bass in there than what we were shocking up. Because in order for those little bitty bass, you're going to like this. For bass to be that size this time of year, if those bass had been spawned in the spring and had survived, they'd be 7 to 10 inches long by now in that part of the world. Out east of Amarillo, Texas. Because there's enough warm days and enough food that those little bitty bass could eat it and grow. Well, in order for a bass to be that big this time of year, it had to have been spawned late in the year, like even September. So what happens is when bass reproduce, especially big bass, they only lay the eggs that are ripe. So in the springtime, when those females go on the beds, their ovaries are so big that all the eggs are not necessarily vasculated, which means that they're not going to all mature at the same time. So she'll lay the first eggs early on, the biggest eggs that mature fastest, she'll spawn those first. Then through the next cycle of the full moon coming into the summer, while the water temperature is still in the spawning window, she'll go at it again. She'll spawn again. And then on those rare occasions, those big bass don't lay all of their eggs. And then as the summer temperatures escalate, then their ability for those eggs to mature begins to diminish. And then you get to September there, and when the water temperature is finally starting to mitigate a little bit, the rest of those eggs can mature, and then she'll lay them. And that's a very late spawn. And I don't think that happens in fish much smaller than about 6 or 7 pounds. So that was pretty intriguing to see that. Well, we did that lake. The recommendation was deal with the aquatic plants, catch and release the bass, apply for some more triploid grass carp, but don't expect them to gain any kind of a meaningful control early next year. If that's the case, that you want to get those plants down a little bit, want to use an approved aquatic herbicide. I'll tell you about the second lake we did here in a minute. Let me scroll down here and see what we got going. Travis, how do I find out? Help. What do you want to find out? Somebody on here will help. I can't call 911 right now. Well, I guess I could. Tell me where you are, and I'll send somebody. Milchewski. God dang it, you have never told me that. Well, appreciate you calling me out here publicly. Milchewski. I always call you Josh Milski. Milchewski. We've been friends long enough, like 25 years, and you're just not telling me that I'm an idiot? That I was wrong? Yeah, attaboy, Josh. I'm not sure if you've gotten the next issue of the magazine, the one with your nephew's questions in it. There's a whole bunch in there for that kid. I'm proud of him. So, Josh, you might have to remind me again. My bad. Milchewski. I can't believe Bruce Condello didn't tell me that. I'm going to have to chew on his Milchewski a little bit, chew him out. So, then the second one we looked at this was really, really interesting. This is about a 9-acre lake right in the middle of what's called the Cap Rock of Texas, where the soils are really mineral laden, gypsum, with some quartz, with a lot of limestone. Well, this guy built a lake that's shaped kind of like it's built in a canyon where two canyons come together, where there's two little creeks that come together into a major creek. And that thing is shaped like a boomerang, but it's, both legs of the boomerang are meandering, kind of serpentine. And there's some sheer drops where he flooded back up into some of that canyon. It's absolutely beautiful. And he piled up several big piles of cedar trees, which is a dominant invasive plant right there, and built some underwater brush piles. Well, he finished building that thing, and it filled up with water 2 years ago. So he stocked his bait fish, gave him a few months, and then stocked a bunch of fingerling F1 tiger bass that he got from American Sport Fish. Choo-choo. I like that better, dude. Okay, Bill Shrum's taking care of business for us. Oh, how do I find out the end of your subscription? Yeah, Leanne knows. Send an email to info@pondboss.com. I'll see it, and Leanne will see it, and she'll handle it. There you go. Okay. Yeah, it does kind of make sense. Choo-choo. I can probably remember that. I'm on that train now. So now, he stocked this bluegill, and he figured out that he had green sunfish in there and a few bullheads that were in the watershed already when he filled the lake up. So there had to be some puddles of that creek where those fish existed. So they started populating. Well, when he stocked his bluegills, it took them a little bit of time to start catching up with the green sunfish. But then when he stocked the bass, he told me, he says, man, I stocked them like at 100 per acre. But as soon as I released them, I saw a number of them get eaten by green sunfish about as big as your hand. So as we were talking about it, we were getting ready to launch the electrofishing boat and just go see it. It was right at dusk. It was a great time to do it. And right just post front. Well, I knew we weren't going to get a huge number of fish, but I just hoped we could get enough of them that we could make an educated, conclusion about what the status of that fishery was. So as we started going, we picked up, I don't remember how many bass, like 8 or 10 bass in that whole lake. And it's just got an abundant amount of structure. Plus, we can only shock down about 6 feet. Well, the bass we picked up, the relative weights, the smallest one was 111%, and the biggest one was about 120, which tells me the numbers were low. Well, just as fate worked out, he made a good decision by stocking 100 more 6 to 8 inch bass. So here's the thing: we saw some bass that were just right at, I guess, 2.5 years old, that weighed beyond 4 pounds. There were several that were in the 2 3/4 up to 3.5, but there was, I think, 1 or 2 of them that, one of them was over 4 and one of them was just a few ounces under 4 for 2.5-year-old fish. That's pretty good. Pretty good growth. So he stocked those, I think, in July of 2022, so 23, 24. So yeah, they're about 2.5. They were spawned 2.5 years ago. Not choosh, not choosh. Okay, shoo. How about I just call you Josh? Josh Milchewski. Josh Milchewski. Okay, Josh, you made your point. Although we're not going to drop it. But as we were going along, we also, he's had a couple of feeders set up on that lake, and he's been feeding his bluegill really, really well. And you could see it. I think we shocked up 5 different size classes of bluegill in that lake, and the cover is abundant. A lot of the fish would escape because they were down, 7 feet. We could see them flash and turn on their sides. Another thing was, here's a clue: we shocked up probably 40 4 to 5 inch long bullhead catfish, and probably 35 or 40 green sunfish that range in size from that to that, on top of 5 size classes of bluegill. So when you see those clues and you look at the relative weight of those bass and they're all overweight, our catch rate was low, which coincides with his angling catch rate. So he's concluded or deduced that his bass population was low. He's correct. Josh. Yeah, Lusk. Dude, let me tell you what happened to me. Sometimes they'll say, somebody will say, is your name Lush? No, that's on Friday night. Lusk. Mr. Lust? No, that's on Saturday night. It's Lusk. It's Tuesday, right? It's Lusk. So, we all have our own little deals. Holy cow, in this hotel room, the TV just popped on and it says, welcome, Bob. How does it know? Weird. Ask me some questions. If not, I'm going to run out of juice pretty quick. But I did want to just share those 2 things. Now, here, I'm going to switch gears. Here's what we did today. I met Mike Otto today at a lake site in south central Oklahoma, not far from the Choctaw Casino for you gamblers out there. You guys know where that is, probably, or not. Bill Schrum. Okay, well, I'll come back to that one here, Bill, and we'll tackle that. I'm glad you did that. That'll help keep the show going a little bit longer before I go find a salad somewhere. So I started talking to this guy 3 years ago. I think Otto started talking to him a couple of years ago, and we went and looked. He had a site to build about a 40-acre lake, but the problem is there would be so much shallow areas that it wouldn't be economically feasible to build that lake unless you wanted to hunt ducks on it. So there's not very many times we give somebody a feasibility no and it stays a feasibility no. That one was a feasibility no, and it had to stay that way because he would have spent low 6 digits just deepening the lake. So he started shopping around. He found a better place where he could build about a 7 or 8 acre lake. Well, he bought a bulldozer and he started doing some clearing and looking at the site and setting some trees aside that we can use for structure. And now he's finally ready to rock and roll. He had an 82-year-old lake builder lined up. And then he got thinking about it. The guy only builds dams that he pushes up. And he knew that at 82, in 10 years, he probably would not be able to warranty his work. How do bass taste, Josh? Oh, what? That is such a fantastic setup. They taste really well in cornmeal and cooked in peanut oil. They taste really, really well. Or wait, does the bass have taste buds? Well, they have more of a sensory for smell than taste. They don't really have taste buds like people do, but they have a fairly decent sense of smell, and that's how they do it. And so I covered both those bases. Mr. McWriter, yeah, right. What? Oh God, dang, you're killing me. Okay, I asked for questions. You guys give me some. Let's see here. I'm gonna back up here. What I was also going to tell you, what we did today was we went out and flagged the shoreline so we could see what the majority of the lake basin is going to look like now. And Otto's son-in-law, Michael Harrelson's out there working on it now. Not after dark, but he's out there with his crew, and they're moving dirt and getting ready to build a dam. And my job was to see how do we want to place fish structure, fish habitat. And we're not quite there yet. They got to move some dirt before I can go back up there and do that. Let's see here. Bill says, the story you're describing exactly what I have. Pond flooded while building. Had no prior exposure to pond management. Unknown to me. I had yellow bullheads and green sunfish when I stocked my initial fish, 200 channel catfish and 500 bluegills. Caught absolutely no bluegill and over 100 green sunfish. Bluegill were fish food. Yep, I can sure see that. Christopher Aguilar, I'm on my second 3 to 4 foot alligator finding its way into my pond. Would you know how much fish they can eat daily? No, I really don't. No, I really don't. I mean, depends on how hungry they are. But you know what? They're going to eat fish, and it depends on how adept they are at catching them. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that an alligator would eat roughly 3 to 5% of its body weight every day, unless it's cold. Then it'll be a little bit less. And I've never tried to feed test an alligator, but I don't know. Travis, do you ever miss LL2? No. I mean, I miss some of the things that we did while we were there. The memories we made, but I've still got that. And here it's kind of funny. We've become almost like surrogate grandparents for those folks as kids that bought the place. So they invite us to come back every couple of years. Twice a year. And so we go there. And actually, I drove by there today and dropped off a Christmas gift for them. And I tell you what I don't miss. I don't miss maintaining that place. We had a 4,600 square foot house, 8 ponds, 8 fish feeders. We had a 30 house chicken house, 30 chicken house. Shh. Just wash my tongue and can't do anything with it. 30 chicken house. Laying hens. We had 8 raised bed gardens, 2 aquaponics gardens, 3 acres of lawns, 13 flower beds, a guest cabin, a 2,700 square foot workshop and vat shed, and all kinds of equipment. And now I don't have to take care of any of that. So that's why I don't miss it. Hello, Peyton Igo. Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, so, on a rare occasion when I think about it, I'll miss it, but it served its purpose. It was a great chapter, new chapter. And now we live on the river, and I can sit out there in the morning and do my Bible study and look at the river and watch deer come across the river or a flock of turkeys run across our backyard. Bald eagles from time to time. It's really, really good. Really, really cool. Okay. Chuck says, what, if anything, can we do for crystal clear water easily see down to 6 feet? Not really much you can do about it right now. Now, if you wanted to decrease the visibility this time of year, I'm okay using dye if you need to. And one of the reasons to do that would be to make it harder for predators to see your fish. Unless you've got good unless you've got really, really good habitat where the fish can escape. But right now, the clear water's fairly normal. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Although I did get a phone call from a guy earlier this week. He only calls me when he's in crisis, and he sent me some pictures of the thickest wintertime blue-green algae bloom I've seen. Second time in that lake, and it's about a 50-acre lake. It's a really popular lake, well known in this part of the country for raising really trophy largemouth bass. So I had him call Bill Cody, which he did right then, and Cody told him how to preserve a sample, and he had visibility down was less than 2 feet, and I don't remember the species, but he had blue-green algae dense enough that it's toxic. There's 2 species of that family of algae. One of them carries toxins, the other one doesn't. So now he's sending off a sample to another lab to determine if that species is the one that carries the toxins. So blue-green algae, and what triggered that was they had 8.5 inches of rainfall into the watershed. It's a huge watershed they've got a giant concrete spillway over the middle of the dam of that lake. And when that 8.5 inches of rain came, it came over like a 36-hour period or something, and it stirred up a bunch of bottom sediments, released a bunch of phosphorus that had been bound up from decaying plants over decades, and created that algae bloom. Bill Schrum, thanks for your advice on restocking the bluegill. I would have stocked bluegill way too small. Yeah, if you got something like that, stock the big ones, and then the channel cat will eat some of those green sunfish, and largemouth bass will too. See the fish, Danny McRider. Okay. Yeah, Danny, I'm the cheap labor. Yeah. In the past few weeks, most of the largemouth bass I've caught have 2 bright red patches in the top of their mouths. What's the cause? Well, Jason Dodd, I'm going to tell you what I bet it is. I bet you, as clear as your lake has been with the amount of vegetation you've had, Jason is in Wichita, Kansas. He renovated that lake a couple, 3 years ago, and the water went from muddy to gin clear because, drum roll, the fish that he killed included thousands of hundreds of pounds, maybe thousands of pounds of gizzard, shad, carp, and buffalo who kept the soil stirred up and kept the lake muddy. When those fish died, the water ran clear, and then the plants started to grow. So the bright red patches in the top of their mouths are very likely where a leech was stuck and then released when the water temperature got cold and left a sore behind. When a leech, this is kind of cool. You guys ask some pretty cool questions. Make me think about stuff I don't think about a lot. But when a leech attaches to a fish, typically they go inside the mouth and will attach to the roof of the mouth or around the lips of the fish or the jaws. Fish don't have lips, Lusk. Yeah, maybe they do. Y'all think they do. Well, then they secrete an anticoagulant, and then they live off the blood that's right there by the surface of wherever they've connected. And then when they disconnect and release, they leave a little red sore behind. That's probably what that is. If it was a bacterial infection, you'd see it manifest elsewhere. Travis has relocated 2 alligators. Huh. Never told y'all a what? About Lusk Lodge, 2. That was a pretty cool place. Actually, it was beautiful. That since we're digging into that a little bit, I'll tell you this. Debbie and I bought that property, I think in 2003, and she remodeled the house, and we moved into it like 6 months later in November of 2003. Then 2 years after that, in November 2005, that house burned to the ground, and it was very traumatic, especially on her. And she was able to come back and build her dream home. I bought a sawmill, which was really cool, and a couple of guys and I spent 6 months, 2 to 3 days a week, cutting down big cedar trees nearby and making a lot of the materials we used in that house. I mean, the staircase was beautiful. It was all half-cut cedar logs, and with about a 3/4 turn going up, a little steep, going to the second floor. All the trim was cedar. Some of the doors were cedar. It was really, really pretty cool. Yep, and then it was her dream home. And then when it finally got to the point, where the real estate market was impressive in 2021, we talked it over, and it was pretty stressful trying to take care of that place. Just a lot to do, and if I couldn't get it done, then I had to hire somebody. Well, when you're a fisheries biologist, you don't make gigantic dollars. You make enough to cover that, But the thing was, we had a pretty good equity in it, so we decided we would sell it. And I'm glad we did, because we sold it at the perfect time. And then we downsized. We got a much smaller house on like 3/4 of an acre of land that's long and narrow and goes straight down to the Brazos River. And it's very soothing. Travis, the only regret, I've never been able to do the pondology. Well, we're going to do 2 of them in 2025 at the West Ranch. And Bill Shrum's been there. There's several guys on here that have been to the pondologies. Danny Mack has, several. Bill Shrum. I saw John Dyer. He was at the last one. He can let you know what it's like. I haven't got the date set. I'll be doing that within the next couple of weeks, and then I'll put that in Pond Boss and then promote it here. Speaking of which, golf ball size what? Man, I'm already behind Josh. Josh Milchewski. Josh, golf ball size what? Danny Mack. I got a dense bloom after vacuuming sediments. Yeah, I could see that. Well, why are you vacuuming sediment? How do you do that? What do you use, like a shop vac, or how the hell? You better not leave us hanging on that. Travis, I thought you only had the lodge and the other sleeping accommodations, the 2 bluegill ponds. Didn't know you had a vegetable farm. Yeah, we did. We sure did. We had those 2 hatchery ponds, which was part of our pondology thing, where we'd seine at least one of those ponds. Yep, and we raised, oh my gosh, one of the aquaponics farm things that we had was so I could hold tilapia over winter. So I'd raise tilapia in one of those hatchery ponds and move them inside, and then overwinter them, and then help cleanse the water so I didn't have to replace their water a lot. We'd run it through an aquaponics system, and man, we grew some outstanding green stuff, different kinds of lettuces and things like that. It was really, really good. Yep, Danny Mack's telling you about that house. Let's see here. Let me see here. Bill Shrum, pondology. There you go. The web. Yeah, that's it. Yep, it's on my bucket list, and I could do it every time. I come out of that every time. I'm so energized by everybody that comes to those, because we all have common interests and different minds, different mindsets, and there's always something creative and cool that comes out of that. And Bill and 2 or 3 other guys are working on some technology things that I haven't had time to turn my attention to it because I've been out in the field working. Plus, I'm trying to finish up the January-February issue of Pond Boss, and I'm 3 weeks behind on that. Okay, what's the white foam frothy stuff that shows up along the bank at various times during the day? That's going to be one of 2 or 3 things. Danny Mack, a 2-inch trash pump. So you must be sucking up sediments with that trash pump and run that water back through some kind of a catch sock or something to hold the sediments, I guess. Yeah, I can see how that would create a bloom. The white foam frothy stuff, actually, that is typically amino acid based protein type stuff that only shows up when the wind is whipping hard. And I see it in rivers and streams and bigger lakes, and it typically happens where there's residue of amino acids, like after a fish kill, for example. And that'll be it. Mark Dyer is going to watch it offline. If you listen to Pond Boss, dude, I was at my granddaughter's recital Sunday, and if I were to pick up my phone, I'd have been hit in the head with a shovel. My wife doesn't usually take shovels unless she needs to hit me in the head with one. First class facilities don't eat Ron Ardoin Boudin. Yeah, he poisoned everybody. I'm glad I only ate one bite of it. It didn't hit me nearly as hard as it did you guys, and I didn't do that on purpose. Just, there was so much to eat, and I'm kind of toning that down for the last year and a half. Okay, so your sucker thing, Danny Mac, is on the intake side, and I guess you're wading out in there, dragging it along like a vacuum cleaner. And then what do you do with the sediments? Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, I don't have one with me. Of course I don't. Why didn't I think about that? I left them all in the truck when I came up to this hotel room. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. And it lasts a year. You guys know that. If you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, please do. That $35 is what fuels the economy of Pond Boss, along with some ad revenue to allow us to be able to produce that thing and host the website and all that stuff. Texas Hunter Products, I love those guys. They've got fish habitat now. They're coming to grips with the pricing on it. They've got new dog feeder products. Check that out. If you need an automatic dog feeder, they've got one, and maybe two or three. I haven't dug down and looked enough, but I know this, that Chris Blood spent a fair amount of his life the last couple of years developing that new product, and it looks top notch. And I've got one little bitty dog, and I feed her by hand, or I'd get one. If I had a big dog like at LL, 2, I would have bought one of those feeders and set it for our dog, for them, but no coyotes or raccoons or any of that kind of stuff. Purina Mills, makers of fine fish foods. Think about those guys. If you haven't started a feeding program, one of the cool things about Purina is they've got enough products now that you can have a feeding program. Like, for example, if you want to target baby bluegills for 6 or 8 weeks, you can do that. If you want to target feed-trained bass, small bluegills, big bluegills, they have the feeds to do that. My favorite right now is Aquamax MVP, multivariable particle. I think I know how he came up with that, but Dr. Schlegel, he's a nutritionist kind of guy, and that's his creative side coming out right there. Multivariable particle. Everybody else thinks it's most valuable product. Okay, that one's on me. Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. I know I'm pronouncing his name right. He corrected me early on. Josh Milchewski, Shoo-Shoo, Josh. Let's see what Travis is saying here. Let me scroll down. I just want to meet you. I have enough information over the last 5 years, but I will try to make the Pondology 2025. Well, I'm pretty fun. My wife doesn't think so. Okay, there was a golf ball sized growth on a wiper we caught recently on its side. What might have caused this? He's one of the bigger fish in the pond. That, I'm going to tell you that is probably a tumor. And not necessarily malignant, although, I'll tell you something else pretty cool that happened to me a few weeks ago. I got to go team up with the Bass Pro Shops fish acquisition team. And Dave Weber, I was probably 80 miles from you down south of Kansas City in Drexel, Missouri, and on a lake that I've been helping design, build, oversee the construction, habitat, and all that stocking. Now, gosh, I think we first started talking about it in 2016 for 8 years. It's had fish in it now for 4. And it's time to harvest some bass. So that landowner told me if I'd put the deal together that he would donate fish to Bass Pro Shops for their aquarium program. And on any given day, they've got over 50,000 animals on display at their stores nationwide, Bass Pro and Cabela's. Well, I've known those guys at Bass Pro Shops probably for 30 years now, and on the facility side, Dan Hoy's a very dear friend. And I thought that could be a win-win deal. So they brought a college professor, Quentin Phelps, from Missouri State University, that was one of Dr. Dave Willis's students, and he brought 2 graduate students with him. And they're the ones that did the electrofishing. And while we're waiting on the boat to come back, I was just quizzing these Bass Pro Shop guys. What do you do when you get fish that are sick? Well, they have pathologists on retainer in 2 or 3 different labs. One of them's the University of Florida that's got a fish pathologist. And they've got those pathologists on retainer. And they are doing some really cool stuff. Like they'll excise tumors on old fish, send them to pathology, and then they'll come back in to repair the wound after they surgically remove the tumor. And then they'll use tilapia skin to graft over the top of the wound, and they use a product called Manuka honey from New Zealand that's got some kind of special healing properties. So they're doing some really, really cool stuff that nobody that I know is going to do, but for them to have those beautiful fish on display, they're going to extreme efforts to care for those fish. And he told me stories over and over and over I thought were really, really cool stuff. That's part of the life I get to lead. John Harson, I do, but you can't see my magazine. Well, if you'll hold it up in front of the camera. Danny Mac, sediment, and Danny McRider. Sediment and water runs downhill within the lot, and we can dig it up to spread it on the rocky hillside. Okay. Oh, okay, so you're just pumping the water out. Okay, so you set up your trash pump, and then you use a long intake hose, and you sweep it back and forth over the sediment across the rocks, I bet, and you're sucking that stuff up. Is there any downside, John says, to continue to feed Grower 400 over MVP? There is no downside to that other than the cost. There is no downside to that. The thing about Grower 400 is it's going to be eaten mostly by smaller fish, which if that's okay with you, that's okay with me. Sediment sounds like great fertilizer. I bet it is. Yep. There's Tim Stewart. Tim's been to the Institute of Aquaponics as well. Warm Florida, December. Yep. You could use Danny. See, Danny and Tim were at the same one. At LL, 2, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I think we've done 5 or 6 of them now. I can't remember. Yeah, Tiny Tim could use the Pondology vacation at Christmas time. Tim is in the bee business. He leases bees to people. So if you need to be pollinated, he's got the bees. I know, that sucked. All right, hey, throw me some more questions. I'm going to scroll back up here. Okay, Danny Mac says, I've looked at sediment bags. Water goes back into the pond, but then you got to deal with the sediment bag. And most of those sediment bags are really not that expensive. And there's some socks you can actually buy. You can have some custom socks made, like up to 10 feet long, and you put them over the output side, and you pump in that sediment, and it's like 200 micron socks. Look at Boat Cycle Manufacturing and look for filter socks. Or just go online and look for filter socks. Because if you did something like that, then you could, and I don't know how much sediment you're talking about. I can't imagine it being a gigantic amount. I can't imagine it being hundreds and hundreds of pounds of that stuff. Have I ever been on a boat with forward-facing sonar? I have not. I've been on a boat with side scan sonar, but not forward-facing sonar. I wouldn't know how to live with that, but I'd figure it out. All right, so you guys pitch me some more questions. Let me think about some other things that have been going on. The next issue of Pond Boss is going to be pretty good. You know, when Pond Boss was first born back in 1991, before the first issue was even published in July of 1992, Mark McDonald was told by several private fisheries biologists that he would run out of topics within the first 5 years. Well, I'm going to tell you, we're always finding new topics, and it's not that bad. Okay, 500 pounds of fish poop. Is that wet or dry? Ooh wee. Okay, let's see here. Del St. Julian's got something. Oh, let me back up here. Okay, I'm going to go back to Bill, and then I'll scoot down to Del. From what I found looking at pictures, I have a lot of Phacelia acuta snails. I have a few red ear sunfish. Should I add more to my 2-acre pond this spring? Yes, and I would add 200 at least. And get the biggest ones you can get within reason. When I say that, typically the ones they sell are about 1 to 2 inches long. If that's all you can get, double that number. Put in 400 because some of them are going to get eaten. But I would add more red ear sunfish. I think that's a good cheap insurance policy rather than dealing with, like Jason Dodd's dealing with the leeches. You know, because if you've got red ear sunfish, they're going to eat leeches, they're going to eat snails, they're going to minimize the risk of some of the different grubs and other parasites that attack fish. All right, so Dell says, I dropped a camera in 4 to 5 feet of water, came face to face with a sculpin. No bodies of water upstream. Where does the sculpin fit in? It's just a value-added cool fish that doesn't matter. It's not going to have any impact on your fishery at all. But it's just kind of cool to know that you've got a few of those. You won't have very many because that's really not the right habitat for them. Okay, let's see. All right, Travis. Thank you, boss, for 5 years. You've been an original. I pray for you and your family. That's very, very kind of you. We need prayers. We all need prayers. You know, to be better humans. We need to pray for our country. We need to pray for each other. Josh Milchewski, tadpoles, what eats them? Not much, because of the texture. They're slimy, snotty, and they give off some kind of a pheromone that makes them smell bad, therefore taste bad to fish that would eat them. But as soon as those legs grow out and they become frogs, game on. There's a lot of things that will eat them. And that's one of their defense mechanisms. And when you do have tadpoles, especially like leopard frogs, it's really cool because you don't have them, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of them. They're jumping everywhere. And they're there for about 3 weeks maybe, and then they're gone. They either get eaten or they flee the scene and go somewhere else. But it's pretty cool every year. I love seeing tadpoles. Those leopard frog tadpoles mature in the first year. Toad tadpoles mature within a few weeks and months at the latest. But bullfrog tadpoles takes them 2 years to go from egg to frog. Okay, Tim, I installed forward-facing sonar on my boat and dropped it in the pond. On cold days, the walking catfish go to the deepest and most toxic water and swim from the very bottom to the surface, get a gulp of air, and go back down. I can watch them go up and down on the live scope. More of an interesting observation. You know, it's interesting watching the bluegill around the structure. That's pretty cool. Can you tape those videos and put them on your social media? That'd be kind of fun to watch. Yeah, and you're probably the only one on here that's got walking catfish. And those apple snails. Apple snails is what, big as your fist? Maybe not quite. Bill Schramm, after the Palm Moss Institute, I decided to do some sampling by fishing, get a better idea of the population of each species. I used a tub of chicken liver and caught 9 yellow bullheads with a total weight of 7.06 pounds. That's pretty accurate. Only one channel catfish, 2.41. Should I be making a more concerted effort to remove the yellow bull? I think I would. And I think with those small bullheads, you might be able to be pretty effective with a trap. Yep. Danny, I've got several bullfrogs. They lived until they were the cutest little frogs, 3 inches and smiling. Then always, that's what happens. They rock and roll, then they go. So guys, you know what? We're getting kind of... Trevor's asking what bass taste like. Haven't we been there? Haven't we done that? They taste like chicken. No way. They taste pretty good. Dipped in cornmeal and cooked in peanut oil at 350. They're a white flaky meat, and they're actually by themselves a little bit bland. I mean, I've broiled them, I've baked them, cooked them in an air fryer. You got to season them up. They don't taste bad. They just taste kind of bland. Just kind of bland. Good question, Trevor. A little bit better than how do they taste? Only words. Okay, guys, it's about 7:19, 7:20, something like that. I'm going to wrap it up and go see if I can find some supper around the road here. I'm really glad you guys checked in. I don't know where I'm going to be next Tuesday, but I'm hoping I'm going to be with you. So I do always appreciate you guys watching because it helps keep me sharp. And let me make sure there's nothing else here. Oh, here comes Ron Krisman. Hey, Bob, what are some do's and don'ts? Here we go. We got another one. What are some do's and don'ts when adding well water to my fingerling ponds during the heat of the summer? Lots of fish and fish waste. I would be real tempted if I'm adding well water to a hot pond and it's heavily loaded with fish, Ron, then I would break that water up. Break it up like either through a nozzle or run it over a piece of corrugated tin to allow it to begin to receive some oxygen. Because that's the number one problem with that, is it doesn't have enough oxygen in it coming straight out of the ground. And that's the main thing. Plus, if it's got any, if it's got iron in it or if it's got any gases in it, the more you can break the water into smaller droplets coming down coming out of the pipe, that's going to help make that water more healthy. Grilled and seasoned. There you go. Bobby West Bass. Yeah, there you go. Time to find a PhD candidate that's got the money grants to research this invasive spread. There you go. Let me know how that works out for you. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody watching. And, hey, Pond Boss, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. Go to pondboss.com. So until next Tuesday, I will see you guys later. Adios.